The cameras were rolling, the tea was hot, and nobody, not even the producers, was ready for what happened next. Fans are shocked after whispers turned into a full-blown eruption when Rasheeda and Kendra Robinson allegedly sat down for what was supposed to be a routine confessional, and walked out with a secret that could flip love and hip-hop, Atlanta upside down. What started as side-eye and shade quickly spiraled into raised voices, slammed doors, and a revelation so explosive that insiders say Mona Scott Young was left absolutely stunned. Here's the part nobody saw coming. Rasheeda and Kendra, two women rarely aligned, found themselves on the same page. Emotions ran high as years of tension bubbled over, and what followed wasn't just gossip, it was a coordinated reveal that hinted at behind-the-scenes choices, quiet deals, and a moment that changed everything. The family was left divided. Friends picked sides. Fans flooded social media demanding answers. And the silence from the top? Deafening. Sources claim the reveal didn't just rattle the cast, it shook the very foundation of the show. Was this about loyalty, power, or a truth that had been buried for seasons? As the clock ticked and the room went cold, one thing became clear. Once this secret hit the air, there was no turning back. Stay right here, because what Rasheeda and Kendra revealed next might be the most jaw-dropping twist LHHATL has ever seen. The room felt heavy before anyone even spoke, like the air itself knew something dangerous was about to be said. Rasheeda sat back in her chair, arms crossed tight against her chest, eyes fixed on Kendra with a look that mixed hesitation and determination. Nobody expected these two to be aligned, not after years of side comments, subtle shade, and unspoken tension. Fans are shocked because this wasn't supposed to be a moment of unity, but emotions ran high as the cameras kept rolling and there was no turning back. Kendra broke the silence first, her voice calm but shaking underneath. She said there were things she had kept quiet about for too long, things that started as loyalty and turned into regret. Rasheeda didn't interrupt, but her jaw clenched, knowing exactly where this was going. The moment Kendra mentioned the word secret, everything shifted. Producers glanced at each other off camera, sensing this wasn't in the rundown. Rasheeda finally leaned forward and said if they were doing this, they were doing it all the way. No half-truths, no protecting feelings. She said she had spent seasons swallowing her own truth to keep the peace, to protect the brand, to protect people who wouldn't do the same for her. The family was left divided long before this conversation, she said, and tonight was about finally explaining why. Kendra revealed that behind closed doors, decisions were made that never made it to the screen. Scenes were cut, narratives reshaped, and certain people were shielded while others were left exposed. She admitted she played a role in it, believing she was doing the right thing, believing promises that were whispered off camera. Rasheeda nodded slowly, adding that she watched storylines get twisted while she was told to stay quiet and trust the process. Trust became a trap, she said, and now the truth was too heavy to carry alone. As the words spilled out, reactions poured in from everywhere. Phones started buzzing, assistants rushed in and out, and someone outside the room raised their voice asking if they should stop filming. Nobody did. Rasheeda described a moment from a past season when she was pressured to confront someone on camera, even though the real conflict was happening somewhere else entirely. She said she felt set up, emotionally drained, and blamed when the fallout hit. Fans are shocked because this wasn't just drama between castmates, it was about control and silence. Kendra's voice cracked as she admitted she was warned not to say certain names, not to question certain moves. She said she was told it was bigger than her, bigger than Rasheeda, bigger than any one person. But now, sitting there, she realized how many relationships were damaged because of that silence. Friendships faded, trust shattered, and families questioned each other's intentions. The family was left divided not just on screen, but at home, behind closed doors where no cameras could fix the damage. Rasheeda looked straight into the lens and said she knew people would call her bitter, dramatic, or ungrateful. She said she was ready for that. What she wasn't ready for anymore was pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. She spoke about nights she went home angry, confused, questioning her own reality because what aired didn't match what she lived. She said when you start doubting yourself, that's when you know something is wrong. Outside the room, other cast members began to hear whispers. One friend texted asking if it was true. Another warned that this could change everything. Fans are shocked, but those close to the situation felt the tension building for years. Kendra explained that the big reveal wasn't about revenge, it was about accountability. She said there was a moment when she realized silence made her complicit, and that realization kept her up at night. She said she owed Rasheeda an apology, not just privately, but publicly. Rasheeda accepted the apology, but not without tears. She said forgiveness didn't erase the pain, and it didn't magically fix what was broken. It just meant she was choosing to stop carrying it alone. The cameras caught her wiping her face, taking a deep breath, and admitting she was scared of what would happen next. Scared of backlash, scared of losing opportunities, scared of being painted as the villain. but she said fear couldn't be the reason she stayed quiet anymore. As the conversation deepened, names started to hover in the air without being spoken. Everyone knew who they were talking about. The silence between sentences said more than words ever could. Kendra hinted that there were receipts, messages, and meetings that would back up everything they were saying. She said she hadn't shared them yet, but she was prepared to if forced. Emotions ran high as the weight of that threat settled in the room. The scene ended with Rasheeda standing up, looking back at Kendra, and saying, "Once this door opens, it never closes again." Kendra nodded, knowing there was no turning back. Outside, the energy had shifted. Something irreversible had begun, and the fallout was just getting started. The moment Rasheeda walked out of the room, the tension didn't disappear, it multiplied. The hallway felt narrower, quieter, like everyone was holding their breath. Kendra stayed seated for a few seconds longer, staring at the empty chair across from her, replaying everything that had just been said. She knew this was only the beginning. Once the cameras captured that conversation, there was no editing trick in the world that could fully bury it. Emotions ran high, and even the crew looked uneasy, whispering to each other as if they were afraid their voices might end up part of the story too. Word traveled fast. Within minutes, phones lit up across the building. Cast members who weren't even scheduled to film that day suddenly showed up, claiming they were just stopping by, but everyone knew they were there for answers. One by one, they gathered in small clusters, speculating, accusing, defending. Fans are shocked now, but inside that building, shock turned into panic. People started asking who knew what, and who was next. Rasheeda stepped outside for air, her hands trembling as she scrolled through unread messages. Some were supportive, others were warnings. One message stood out, short and cold, telling her she had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Instead of responding, she locked her phone and looked up at the sky, reminding herself why she spoke up in the first place. She wasn't chasing drama anymore, she was chasing peace, even if it came at a cost. Inside, Kendra was approached by someone she once trusted, someone who had encouraged her silence before. Their tone was different now, sharp, defensive. They accused her of exaggerating, of twisting narratives. Kendra didn't raise her voice. She calmly said the truth didn't need embellishment. That response only made things worse. Accusations flew, fingers pointed, and suddenly years of buried resentment spilled into the open. The family was left divided in real time, alliances shifting with every sentence. One castmate broke down crying, saying they felt betrayed by the system, by the promises that were made when they signed on. Another laughed bitterly, claiming everyone was pretending to be surprised when they all benefited at some point. Emotions ran high as the room split between those demanding transparency and those desperate to protect what they still had. Nobody was neutral anymore. Rasheeda was eventually called back inside. When she entered, the noise dropped. All eyes were on her. Someone asked if she really meant what she said, if she was ready for the consequences. She didn't hesitate. She said she had already lived with the consequences of staying silent, and they were heavier than anything that could come next. Fans are shocked hearing this now, but in that moment, it felt like a confession and a warning all at once. Kendra added that this wasn't about destroying the show, it was about exposing the cracks that everyone kept stepping over. She said the audience deserved honesty, not carefully curated chaos. Someone scoffed, accusing her of playing victim. That's when Rasheeda snapped. She raised her voice, reminding everyone of nights spent crying off camera, of storylines that followed her kids to school through social media comments, of family members questioning her character because of scenes taken out of context. The room fell silent again. A producer tried to regain control, suggesting they take a break, cool off, revisit the conversation later. Rasheeda refused. She said breaks were how things got buried. Kendra backed her up, saying the secret was already out, whether people liked it or not. She hinted again at evidence, at timelines that didn't match what aired. That's when the fear became visible. People weren't just angry anymore, they were scared. Calls were made upstairs. Meetings were requested urgently. Whispers of legal teams and emergency edits floated through the air. Rasheeda noticed how quickly power shifted when the narrative slipped out of control. She felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. This wasn't the victory she imagined, it was messy, painful, and deeply personal. The family was left divided, and there was no clean way to fix it. Later that night, a private sit-down was arranged with a few key figures. No cameras, no microphones, just tense silence and guarded expressions. Rasheeda and Kendra were told they needed to reconsider how far they were willing to go. They were reminded of contracts, of reputations, of future opportunities. Kendra listened quietly, then asked a simple question: why was honesty always treated like a threat? Nobody answered. Rasheeda spoke next, saying she wasn't asking permission to tell her story anymore. She said if protecting the image meant sacrificing her mental health, it wasn't worth it. Emotions ran high as she admitted she had considered walking away before, but fear kept her in place. Now, fear felt smaller than regret. Fans are shocked because this wasn't the Rasheeda they were used to seeing. This was someone done playing a role. The meeting ended without resolution. Everyone left knowing the storm was far from over. By the next morning, rumors leaked online. Vague posts, cryptic captions, unfollowings noticed by fans within minutes. Comments exploded with theories, support, and backlash. The audience sensed something big was unfolding, even without details. The silence from the top only fueled speculation. Rasheeda watched it all unfold from home, surrounded by family who didn't know whether to comfort her or worry for her. She admitted she didn't have all the answers, only the need to finally be honest. Kendra checked in, reminding her she wasn't alone this time. That solidarity mattered more than either of them expected. Behind the scenes, lines were being drawn. Some cast members prepared statements, others planned counter-narratives. The pressure mounted as filming schedules were questioned and scenes reconsidered. Emotions ran high as everyone realized the show they thought they knew was changing. The secret wasn't just about the past, it was reshaping the future. And as the tension continued to build, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't a single reveal, it was a chain reaction. And the next fallout was already on the way. The fallout didn't wait for permission. By the time the next filming day arrived, the atmosphere felt radioactive. People spoke in half sentences, eyes darting, trust evaporated. Rasheeda arrived early, determined to face whatever came head on. She didn't come alone. Family members insisted on being nearby, not on camera, but close enough to remind her she wasn't isolated anymore. The family was left divided, but the core stood firm, and that gave her strength she hadn't felt in years. Kendra showed up later, her expression calm but guarded. She hugged Rasheeda without hesitation, a quiet moment that spoke louder than any speech. Fans are shocked watching this back because they never imagined these two standing together like this. Whispers followed them as they walked, some supportive, others sharp. Someone muttered that alliances like this never last. Rasheeda heard it and kept walking. Filming began with a group scene that was never meant to be confrontational, but nothing about this moment was normal anymore. Within minutes, tension bubbled over. One cast member accused Rasheeda of trying to rewrite history. Another claimed Kendra was exaggerating to secure her spot. Emotions ran high as voices overlapped, accusations stacking on top of old wounds. Rasheeda snapped back, saying history didn't need rewriting, it needed correcting. Kendra added that comfort with a lie didn't make it true. A sudden outburst changed everything. Someone shouted that the secret wasn't even the real problem, that the real issue was who benefited while others burned. Silence followed. Everyone knew exactly what that meant. The cameras zoomed in, catching reactions nobody could fake. Anger, fear, guilt, relief, all colliding at once. The family was left divided in that room too, friendships cracking under the weight of honesty. One person broke ranks and admitted they had seen things happen behind the scenes that never should have happened. They said they stayed quiet because they were scared of being iced out. That confession opened the floodgates. Another admitted they were coached before scenes, nudged toward certain emotions, discouraged from others. Fans are shocked hearing these claims now, but for the people living it, it felt like a long overdue release. Rasheeda listened, tears in her eyes, not from vindication but from exhaustion. She said this was what she meant all along. It wasn't about villains and heroes, it was about a system that rewarded chaos and punished honesty. Emotions ran high as she described feeling like her real life was being used as leverage, her pain repackaged as entertainment. She said she agreed to drama, not distortion. Kendra added her own story, revealing a moment when she questioned a storyline and was subtly reminded of how replaceable she was. She said that fear kept her compliant longer than she was proud of. Saying it out loud felt terrifying and freeing at the same time. The room shifted again, empathy creeping in where hostility once lived. Not everyone was moved. One castmate accused them both of playing to the audience, of pretending this was about integrity when it was really about control. Rasheeda fired back that control was exactly what she was finally letting go of. She said she couldn't control how people reacted, only whether she told the truth. That word hung in the air like a challenge. Later that day, private conversations exploded. Some people apologized, others doubled down. Alliances that lasted seasons dissolved in hours. The family was left divided across phone calls and group chats, with relatives begging people to stop before things went too far. Rasheeda got a call from someone close, warning her that powerful people were furious. She thanked them for the warning and said she already knew. Behind closed doors, emergency meetings continued. Options were discussed, damage assessed. The idea of editing around the controversy came up again, but it was too late. Too many pieces were already in motion. Social media buzzed with speculation, screenshots, and insider claims. Fans are shocked because the energy felt different this time. It wasn't just petty drama, it felt like a reckoning. Kendra watched the online reaction with mixed emotions. Support poured in, but so did hate. People questioned her motives, her timing, her loyalty. She admitted to Rasheeda that she was scared. Rasheeda told her fear was part of it, but silence was worse. She said if this conversation helped even one person feel less crazy about their own experiences, it was worth it. Another twist hit when a former cast member spoke out online, backing up parts of the story without naming names. That post sent everything into overdrive. Emotions ran high as people realized this wasn't isolated. It was a pattern. The family was left divided in public now, fans choosing sides, debates raging non-stop. Filming resumed days later with a sit-down that everyone knew would explode. Rasheeda entered composed, Kendra beside her. Across the room sat those who felt threatened, defensive, angry. The conversation started tense and quickly turned volatile. Voices rose, tears fell, and old receipts were referenced without being shown. The implication alone was enough. Fans are shocked watching the rawness of it all, the lack of polish, the discomfort that couldn't be edited away. One person finally asked the question everyone avoided. What do you actually want to happen? Rasheeda paused. She said she wanted honesty going forward. Not perfection, not safety, just truth. Kendra said she wanted accountability, not punishment. Those answers didn't satisfy everyone. Someone laughed bitterly, saying that kind of change never sticks. Rasheeda responded that maybe it doesn't, but trying mattered more than pretending. As the scene ended, there was no neat resolution. People walked away unsettled, some angrier than before, others quietly reflective. The family was left divided, but cracks had turned into openings. Conversations that never would have happened were now unavoidable. Emotions ran high long after the cameras stopped. That night, Rasheeda sat alone, replaying everything. Doubt crept in. What if she went too far? What if this backfired completely? Then she remembered the years of swallowing words, the weight of silence, and the doubt faded. She didn't know how this would end, only that it had to start. Kendra sent a message saying whatever happens, she didn't regret speaking up. Rasheeda replied that neither did she. Outside, the noise continued, speculation growing louder, pressure building. Something bigger than either of them was unfolding now, and the consequences were no longer theoretical. The storm wasn't passing, it was still gathering strength. And everyone involved could feel it. By the time the reunion discussions started circulating, the tension had hardened into something permanent. There was no pretending this was just another storyline anymore. Rasheeda felt it the moment she walked into the building, the way conversations stopped mid-sentence, the way smiles didn't reach eyes. Emotions ran high before a single word was spoken. Kendra stayed close, not out of fear, but out of solidarity. That alone spoke volumes. The room filled slowly, each person choosing a seat like it was a declaration of allegiance. The family was left divided visually, physically, unmistakably. Some sat together, whispering and nodding, others kept their distance, arms crossed, jaws tight. Rasheeda took a deep breath and reminded herself she wasn't there to win, she was there to be honest. Fans are shocked seeing how calm she looked, knowing what was coming. The conversation started cautiously, almost polite, but it didn't last. Someone questioned Rasheeda's timing, implying she waited until it benefited her most. She didn't raise her voice. She said pain doesn't run on a schedule, and courage doesn't come when it's convenient. That answer drew murmurs, both supportive and skeptical. Kendra jumped in, saying timing is always criticized when the truth makes people uncomfortable. Then came the accusations. One by one, people voiced their frustrations, their suspicions, their anger. Some felt exposed, others felt betrayed. Emotions ran high as voices overlapped, tears spilled, and tempers flared. Rasheeda listened more than she spoke, letting people get it out, knowing this chaos was part of the process. When she finally spoke again, her voice was steady but heavy. She said everyone in that room had been hurt by the system in some way, even if they weren't ready to admit it. Kendra shared something new, a moment she hadn't spoken about before. She described a late-night call where she was advised to reconsider her stance, reminded of what she stood to lose. She said it wasn't a threat, but it felt like one. The room went quiet. Fans are shocked hearing that kind of pressure described so plainly. The family was left divided between those who believed her and those who felt attacked by implication. Someone finally said the name nobody wanted to say. It landed like a bomb. Gasps, shifting seats, nervous laughter. Rasheeda didn't flinch. She said saying the name didn't change the truth, it just made people confront it. Emotions ran high as that realization settled in. This wasn't about individuals anymore, it was about power and silence. A heated exchange broke out between two castmates who had once been inseparable. Accusations of betrayal flew back and forth, old secrets dragged into the light. The family was left divided in ways that couldn't be edited into a neat arc. Rasheeda watched it unfold with a mix of sadness and validation. This was the cost of honesty, but also its necessity. During a break, Rasheeda stepped outside again, this time joined by someone she never expected to support her. They admitted they had doubted her at first, but seeing everything laid out changed their perspective. That quiet acknowledgement meant more to her than public applause ever could. Fans are shocked by the shifting alliances, but for Rasheeda, it felt like small pieces of truth clicking into place. Back inside, Kendra was challenged directly. Someone accused her of hiding behind Rasheeda, using her as a shield. Kendra stood up, voice firm, saying she stood beside Rasheeda, not behind her. She said accountability didn't mean isolation, and courage didn't require loneliness. That moment drew applause from some, eye rolls from others. Emotions ran high, but clarity was forming. The conversation turned to the future. What happens now? Silence followed. No one had a clean answer. Rasheeda said she didn't expect everything to change overnight. She just wanted a commitment to stop manipulating pain for entertainment. Some nodded, others looked unconvinced. The family was left divided on what change even meant. Another twist emerged when a message was read aloud, allegedly from someone not in the room, acknowledging mistakes without fully owning them. The half-apology only fueled frustration. Rasheeda shook her head, saying accountability without ownership was just another performance. Fans are shocked by how raw and unscripted it all felt. As the reunion wrapped, there was no dramatic hug, no tidy resolution. People left in silence, some crying, some angry, some thoughtful. The cameras captured it all, but even they couldn't fully convey the weight of what had happened. Emotions ran high long after filming ended. In the days that followed, the ripple effects intensified. Interviews dropped, statements released, some vague, some defensive. Social media became a battlefield. Fans are shocked as old clips resurfaced, re-examined through a new lens. Moments that once seemed harmless now felt loaded. The family was left divided publicly, with supporters arguing fiercely on both sides. Rasheeda stayed mostly quiet, choosing her words carefully when she did speak. She said she had told her truth and didn't need to repeat it louder to make it real. Kendra, on the other hand, decided to address the backlash head-on. She acknowledged her past silence, owning it without excuses. That honesty softened some critics and enraged others. Emotions ran high either way. Behind the scenes, consequences began to surface. Meetings were held, plans reconsidered, futures uncertain. Nothing was officially announced, but the shift was undeniable. Rasheeda felt the ground moving beneath her feet, unstable but honest. She admitted to family that she didn't know what came next, only that she felt lighter than she had in years. One night, alone at home, she rewatched old episodes, seeing herself through new eyes. Moments she once questioned now made sense. She wasn't imagining things. That realization brought tears, but also peace. The family was left divided, but her inner world felt more aligned than ever. Kendra called late, admitting she was struggling with the weight of it all. Rasheeda reminded her that disruption often feels like destruction before it feels like growth. They laughed softly at how unlikely their friendship once seemed. Fans are shocked by this bond, but it was forged in truth, not convenience. As rumors continued to swirl about what would air and what wouldn't, one thing became clear. No edit could fully erase what had already been felt. The audience sensed it, the cast lived it, the system had been exposed, even if only partially. And while no one knew exactly how it would end, everyone knew it would never be the same. The silence was broken, the lines were drawn, and the story was still unfolding. The weeks that followed felt like living inside an aftershock that never fully settled. Every day brought a new headline, a new reaction, a new piece of the story twisting in ways nobody could control. Rasheeda tried to keep her routine normal, but nothing about her life felt ordinary anymore. Even simple errands turned into moments of tension as whispers followed her, some supportive, some judgmental. Fans are shocked by how quickly admiration turned into interrogation, and how strangers felt entitled to answers she was still figuring out herself. Kendra faced her own storm. Interviews she never asked for appeared online, quotes taken out of context, pauses interpreted as guilt. Emotions ran high as she watched people debate her character like it was public property. She reminded herself that she chose honesty knowing it wouldn't be comfortable. Still, there were nights she questioned whether she should have waited, softened the message, protected herself more. Each time that doubt crept in, she remembered the moment she finally spoke and felt the weight lift. That feeling mattered. Behind the scenes, conversations grew colder. Emails were shorter. Meetings were postponed. Uncertainty hung over everything. The family was left divided even in private, with loved ones urging caution while others encouraged her to keep going. Rasheeda listened to everyone and followed no one blindly. She knew this path required intuition, not consensus. A major turning point came when footage began to leak. Not full scenes, just fragments, moments that confirmed what had been hinted at. Fans are shocked as clips spread, analyzed frame by frame. What once looked like simple drama now carried different meaning. Side glances, abrupt cuts, awkward transitions all felt intentional in hindsight. Emotions ran high as viewers felt both validated and manipulated. Rasheeda released a brief statement, not defensive, not detailed, simply acknowledging the conversations and thanking those who listened with empathy. That restraint frustrated critics who wanted more, but it grounded her supporters. Kendra followed with a longer message, owning her past silence without deflecting blame. She wrote that growth often begins with discomfort and that accountability starts with self-reflection. The responses were mixed, but the tone shifted slightly. Less outrage, more conversation. Still, not everyone was ready to move forward. A former ally spoke out aggressively, accusing both women of exaggeration and betrayal. The family was left divided again as people took sides. Rasheeda didn't respond publicly. Privately, it hurt. She admitted to feeling blindsided by the harshness, wondering how quickly loyalty evaporated. Emotions ran high, but she reminded herself that truth doesn't require universal approval. Kendra reached out, offering support, reminding Rasheeda they anticipated this backlash. She said disruption always exposes who benefits from silence. That perspective helped. Together, they decided to step back from reacting and focus on what they could control. Peace became a strategy, not a retreat. As the reunion episodes aired, reactions intensified. Viewers noticed the tension, the pauses, the words left unsaid. Fans are shocked by how raw it felt compared to previous seasons. Even critics admitted something had shifted. The family was left divided on-screen, but the audience felt more united in questioning what they were watching. Rasheeda watched the episodes with mixed emotions. Some moments felt validating, others painful. Seeing herself hold back tears, choose words carefully, relive frustration reminded her how heavy that period was. But it also reminded her of her strength. She didn't explode. She didn't disappear. She stood in her truth, even when it trembled. Kendra struggled more watching herself. She noticed moments where fear still controlled her tone, where old habits of caution crept in. Instead of criticizing herself, she chose compassion. Growth wasn't instant, and she was still learning. Emotions ran high, but so did resolve. Then came another unexpected twist. A producer released a vague statement acknowledging that conversations were happening internally about transparency and process. It wasn't an apology, but it was an admission. Fans are shocked by the shift in language alone. The family was left divided on whether it was genuine or strategic, but nobody could deny it was a response. Rasheeda felt a cautious sense of relief. Not triumph, not vindication, just acknowledgement. She knew words alone didn't equal change, but they cracked the door open. Kendra agreed, saying progress often starts with uncomfortable admissions rather than grand gestures. New opportunities quietly began to surface. Not flashy offers, but conversations rooted in respect. Rasheeda was approached about projects that allowed her more control over her narrative. The idea of telling stories without distortion felt liberating. Emotions ran high as she realized speaking up didn't just cost her, it opened doors she didn't know existed. Kendra explored similar paths, focusing on work that aligned with her values. She admitted she felt more selective now, less willing to compromise for visibility. The family was left divided about her choices, but she felt grounded in them. Peace replaced panic, slowly but steadily. Not everything resolved cleanly. Some relationships remained broken. Some apologies never came. Some viewers stayed skeptical. Rasheeda accepted that closure isn't always mutual. Sometimes it's internal. She focused on healing rather than convincing. Late one night, Rasheeda and Kendra met quietly, away from cameras and noise. They talked about everything and nothing, laughter mixing with reflection. They acknowledged how strange it was that conflict brought them together, how honesty forged an unexpected bond. Fans are shocked by this friendship, but for them, it felt natural now. Rasheeda admitted she still feared the unknown. Kendra admitted she did too. Neither pretended to have it all figured out. That honesty felt like freedom. Emotions ran high, but they were softer now, less explosive, more human. As speculation about future seasons continued, neither rushed to announce anything. Silence, this time, was intentional, not imposed. The family was left divided in opinion, but Rasheeda and Kendra were aligned in purpose. They knew whatever came next had to be chosen, not forced. The story didn't end with a neat resolution or a dramatic final scene. It lingered, evolved, continued in conversations and reflections. Fans are shocked because reality rarely offers closure, only progress. And in that messy, uncomfortable space, Rasheeda and Kendra found something they hadn't expected when this all began. Their voices. As the noise slowly settled, a new kind of tension replaced it, quieter but sharper. It wasn't the chaos of shouting matches or public confrontations anymore, it was the uncertainty. Rasheeda felt it every time her phone buzzed, every time a meeting was requested without an agenda. Fans are shocked because the drama didn't explode, it simmered, and that made it harder to escape. Emotions ran high in private moments now, where there were no cameras to absorb the impact. Kendra noticed the shift too. People who once rushed to speak to her now hesitated, choosing words carefully, watching reactions. She realized transparency had changed how others interacted with her. Some respected it, others feared it. The family was left divided not by arguments but by distance. Silence replaced confrontation, and in many ways, that felt heavier. Another unexpected ripple surfaced when behind-the-scenes staff began reaching out quietly. Some thanked Rasheeda for saying what they never could. Others hinted that what came out barely scratched the surface. Fans are shocked by how deep the implications seemed to run. Rasheeda listened without responding publicly, understanding that not every truth needed a microphone. Emotions ran high as she absorbed stories that mirrored her own frustration, her own confusion over the years. Kendra struggled with guilt during this phase. She wondered how many moments she could have spoken up sooner, how many people were affected by her silence. Rasheeda reminded her that growth doesn't move backward, only forward. She said blaming the past wouldn't heal anyone. That reassurance strengthened their bond, grounding them when doubt crept in. Meanwhile, speculation intensified online. Fans dissected every appearance, every caption, every absence. Fans are shocked by how invested they became, reading meaning into silence and shadows. Some demanded more revelations, others begged for peace. The family was left divided in opinion, mirroring the fractures within the cast itself. A turning point came during a private industry event where Rasheeda and Kendra unexpectedly crossed paths with people who once held power over their narratives. The interaction was polite but strained. Emotions ran high beneath forced smiles. Rasheeda noticed something new though, hesitation. The confidence she once felt looming over her was cracked. Speaking up had shifted the balance, even subtly. Later that night, Rasheeda admitted she felt both empowered and exhausted. She questioned whether this constant state of awareness was sustainable. Kendra confessed she felt the same. Honesty brought freedom, but it also demanded resilience. The family was left divided between celebrating the change and mourning what was lost. Another wave hit when an edited clip aired that many felt downplayed the gravity of what happened. Fans are shocked by what they saw as avoidance. Comment sections exploded, calling out omissions, questioning motives. Emotions ran high as viewers realized how much influence editing still held. Rasheeda chose not to react immediately, but the disappointment was visible. She said control wasn't fully gone yet, just challenged. Kendra finally addressed it in a live conversation, choosing her words carefully. She said progress doesn't mean perfection, and discomfort doesn't disappear overnight. She reminded viewers that systems don't change because of one moment, but because of sustained pressure. The response was mixed, but thoughtful. The family was left divided, yet engaged. Privately, Rasheeda began redefining success. It was no longer about screen time or storyline dominance. It was about alignment. She declined opportunities that felt familiar but wrong. Emotions ran high when she realized how often she once said yes out of fear. Saying no now felt radical. Kendra followed a similar path, stepping back from spaces that demanded performance over authenticity. She admitted to feeling lighter, even when uncertainty lingered. The family was left divided on these decisions, but both women trusted their instincts more than external approval. Then came a quiet moment that changed everything again. A younger cast member reached out, thanking them for creating space to speak honestly. That message mattered. Fans are shocked by how influence doesn't always look loud. Emotions ran high as Rasheeda realized this wasn't just about her story anymore, it was about shifting culture, even slightly. As months passed, the intensity softened but never vanished. Conversations continued in different forms: panels, interviews, private meetings. Some people resisted, others adapted. The family was left divided, but dialogue existed where silence once ruled. Rasheeda reflected on how fear once dictated her choices. Now, uncertainty felt less threatening than suppression. She didn't know what the future of the show looked like, or her place in it. But she knew she wouldn't shrink herself to fit a narrative again. Emotions ran high when she finally accepted that clarity. Kendra echoed that sentiment, saying she no longer measured her worth by proximity to power. Integrity became her compass. Fans are shocked by how grounded she appeared compared to earlier seasons. Growth was visible, even when messy. In the end, there was no grand announcement, no dramatic exit, no final word. Just evolution. The family was left divided, the audience still debating, the industry still adjusting. But something fundamental had shifted. The secret wasn't just revealed. It was absorbed, and nothing that followed could undo that. Time passed, but the impact didn't fade. It settled into people's lives in quieter, more complicated ways. Rasheeda noticed it when conversations stopped being performative and started becoming careful. People listened differently now, weighing their words, questioning intentions. Fans are shocked because the drama didn't just entertain anymore, it challenged. Emotions ran high in spaces where laughter once came easy. Kendra felt that shift deeply. She realized that once you disrupt a comfortable lie, you don't get invited back into the comfort the same way. Some doors closed without explanation. Others opened slowly, cautiously. The family was left divided between pride and concern, with loved ones asking if the cost was worth it. Kendra didn't always have an answer, but she knew silence would have been worse. Another layer of tension surfaced as contracts and future plans came into question. Nothing was said directly, but uncertainty hovered. Rasheeda learned how quickly security can feel conditional. Fans are shocked hearing how fragile things looked behind the scenes, especially after years of apparent stability. Emotions ran high as she confronted the possibility that speaking up might permanently alter her career path. Instead of panicking, she slowed down. She focused on her family, grounding herself in routines that had nothing to do with cameras or opinions. The family was left divided in public perception, but at home, there was clarity. She reminded herself that she was more than a storyline, more than a reaction. That truth mattered. Kendra experienced a similar pull inward. She spent time reflecting on how ambition once guided her choices. Success used to mean visibility. Now it meant alignment. Fans are shocked by the shift in her energy, calmer, more deliberate. Emotions ran high as she accepted that not everyone would come with her into this next chapter. A surprising moment arrived when a private conversation took place between individuals who once refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't denial either. It was careful, measured, and revealing. Rasheeda listened more than she spoke. She recognized deflection when she heard it, but she also recognized fear. The family was left divided on whether this conversation signaled progress or protection. Still, it marked a change. Silence was no longer the default response. Fans are shocked because even hesitation felt like movement. Emotions ran high as Rasheeda realized she didn't need full validation to feel justified. Her experience was real regardless of acknowledgement. Kendra, however, wrestled with impatience. She wanted accountability to be clearer, louder. Rasheeda reminded her that systems rarely transform cleanly. She said sometimes the biggest win is making it harder for harm to stay hidden. That perspective helped, even if frustration lingered. Online discourse continued to evolve. Early outrage gave way to deeper discussions about reality TV, power, and manipulation. Fans are shocked by how reflective the audience became. Emotions ran high in comment sections, but the conversations felt more intentional, less reactive. The family was left divided in opinion, but engagement felt more meaningful. Another unexpected ripple came when someone completely outside the circle referenced the situation publicly, framing it as a turning point for the genre. That external validation hit differently. Rasheeda felt seen, not celebrated, but understood. Kendra felt a sense of relief, knowing the story had outgrown personal conflict. With time, anger softened into resolve. Rasheeda stopped replaying every moment, every word. She accepted that not everyone would interpret the story the same way. Control wasn't the goal anymore. Honesty was. Emotions ran high when she realized how much energy she used to spend managing perception. Kendra began mentoring quietly, offering guidance to those navigating similar pressures. She didn't position herself as an expert, just someone who learned the hard way. Fans are shocked by how influence can exist without spectacle. The family was left divided on whether she should be more public, but she trusted her instincts. Then came a subtle but powerful moment. During a casual appearance, Rasheeda was asked a question that once would have triggered defensiveness. This time, she answered calmly, without fear. The shift was visible. Emotions ran high for those who noticed the growth, the steadiness, the refusal to be baited. Privately, both women acknowledged the toll. Growth came with grief. Relationships changed. Certainty disappeared, but something else replaced it, self-respect. The family was left divided, but their inner circles felt stronger, more honest. As time moved forward, speculation about the show's direction never fully stopped. Fans are shocked by how unresolved everything felt. But life doesn't wrap itself in finales. Rasheeda accepted that ambiguity was part of this journey. She no longer needed everything to make sense immediately. Kendra agreed. She said clarity often comes after chaos, not during it. Emotions ran high as they reflected on how far they'd come from that first conversation, the one that started everything. Fear had been loud then. Now it was quieter, manageable. In moments of doubt, Rasheeda returned to the reason she spoke up. Not to expose for the sake of exposure, but to reclaim her voice. That intention kept her grounded. The secret was never just about what happened. It was about what silence costs. As the months continued, the narrative stopped being about scandal and started being about consequence. Some changes were visible, others weren't, but the shift existed. Fans are shocked by how something so dramatic could lead to something so subtle. The family was left divided, the audience still debating, the industry still adjusting. But Rasheeda and Kendra moved forward with intention. Not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. And in a space once defined by manufactured chaos, that honesty became the most disruptive force of all. The narrative kept stretching, refusing to settle into anything simple. Rasheeda realized that once people stopped arguing about whether the secret was real, they started arguing about what it meant. That shift was subtle but powerful. Fans are shocked because the conversation moved from gossip to accountability, from shock value to impact. Emotions ran high in spaces that once thrived on distraction. Kendra noticed how people now approached her with caution and curiosity instead of assumptions. Some wanted reassurance, others wanted direction. She reminded herself she wasn't responsible for guiding everyone through their discomfort. Still, she listened when it felt sincere. The family was left divided between those who wanted quick answers and those willing to sit with uncertainty. Another unexpected development surfaced when internal changes quietly took place. Small adjustments, barely noticeable to the audience, but meaningful to those behind the scenes. New conversations happened before filming. Questions were asked that were once avoided. Fans are shocked by how even tiny shifts felt significant. Emotions ran high as Rasheeda realized the truth didn't dismantle everything, it forced reflection. Not all reactions were positive. Resistance hardened in some corners. People clung tighter to old ways, dismissing the situation as overblown. The family was left divided again as some defended tradition while others demanded evolution. Rasheeda didn't engage in debates anymore. She understood that growth isn't unanimous. Kendra faced a personal crossroads when an opportunity arose that mirrored past compromises. It promised visibility but required silence on certain topics. She turned it down. That decision scared her more than speaking out ever did. Emotions ran high as she chose integrity over familiarity. Fans are shocked by how quietly powerful that choice was. Rasheeda supported her fully, sharing how often she once accepted similar deals out of fear. They talked openly about how courage looks different at every stage. Sometimes it's speaking loudly, sometimes it's walking away quietly. The family was left divided on these moves, but their alignment felt stronger than external approval. Another ripple hit when a longtime viewer shared a personal story online, explaining how watching Rasheeda and Kendra speak up helped them confront their own situation of being misrepresented and silenced. That post went viral. Fans are shocked because it reframed everything. This wasn't just entertainment fallout, it was resonance. Emotions ran high as Rasheeda read the comments, realizing the reach of her honesty extended far beyond the show. That moment grounded her. It reminded her why she endured the backlash, the doubt, the loss of comfort. The secret wasn't just industry-specific, it was human. It was about power, voice, and the cost of silence. The family was left divided, but empathy bridged gaps that arguments never could. Kendra began speaking more intentionally in public spaces, not revealing more secrets, but contextualizing the experience. She emphasized nuance, reminding people that harm doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like constant second-guessing, like shrinking yourself to fit expectations. Fans are shocked by the maturity of the conversation, by how far it drifted from typical reality TV discourse. Still, pressure lingered. Rumors about future involvement resurfaced, some hopeful, some threatening. Rasheeda stayed neutral, refusing to speculate publicly. Privately, she weighed her options carefully. Emotions ran high as she acknowledged that staying might mean continued negotiation, while leaving might mean unfinished business. Neither path felt easy. Kendra faced a similar dilemma. She admitted she missed the structure, the familiarity, even the chaos at times. But she didn't miss the fear. That distinction mattered. The family was left divided in advice, but both women trusted their internal compass more than external noise. Another moment of tension arrived when a public figure dismissed the situation entirely, calling it manufactured outrage. Fans are shocked by the backlash that followed. Emotions ran high as people defended the significance of lived experience. Rasheeda didn't respond directly. She understood that minimizing discomfort is easier than confronting it. Instead, she focused on healing. Therapy, reflection, honest conversations with family. The family was left divided in understanding at first, but clarity grew. They saw how much lighter she seemed, how present. That change spoke louder than any rebuttal. Kendra also leaned into healing, unpacking why approval once mattered so much. She realized how deeply external validation shaped her choices. Releasing that hold felt uncomfortable, like losing gravity. Emotions ran high as she learned to trust herself without constant affirmation. As the months rolled on, the story transformed again. It became less about exposure and more about evolution. Fans are shocked by how patience replaced outrage. Discussions became thoughtful. Even critics softened their tone. The family was left divided, but dialogue replaced dismissal. Rasheeda reflected on how unpredictably this all unfolded. She never planned to become a symbol or a disruptor. She just reached a breaking point. That honesty resonated because it wasn't strategic. It was necessary. Emotions ran high when she accepted that impact doesn't require intention, only truth. Kendra agreed. She said the most powerful moments weren't rehearsed, they were raw. The initial conversation, the trembling voices, the uncertainty. That vulnerability cracked something open that couldn't be closed again. Another quiet victory emerged when internal conversations led to clearer boundaries around storytelling. Not perfect, not revolutionary, but intentional. Fans are shocked by how incremental change still felt meaningful. The family was left divided on whether it was enough, but progress rarely satisfies everyone. Rasheeda understood that now. She stopped measuring success by outcomes and started measuring it by alignment. She no longer felt split between who she was and who she appeared to be. That integration brought peace. Kendra found peace too, though different in shape. Hers came from agency, from choosing when to speak and when to step back. Emotions ran high as she realized silence could be powerful when it was chosen, not imposed. The narrative never fully closed. Questions remained. Relationships stayed strained. Trust rebuilt slowly, unevenly. But something fundamental had changed. The secret no longer controlled the story. Honesty did. Fans are shocked because the loudest revelation wasn't the accusations or the fallout. It was the endurance. The willingness to sit with discomfort and still move forward. The family was left divided, but growth doesn't require unity, only momentum. And as the story continued to echo in conversations, panels, and reflections, one truth remained steady. Speaking up altered the landscape, not instantly, not perfectly, but permanently. That was the real reveal. The longer the story lived, the more it stopped belonging to any one person. Rasheeda noticed that people weren't just reacting to what happened anymore, they were projecting their own experiences onto it. Fans are shocked because the conversation kept expanding, touching nerves far beyond the original circle. Emotions ran high in messages she received from people who felt seen for the first time, people who said silence once felt safer until it didn't. Kendra felt that weight too. She realized that when you speak a truth out loud, it gives others permission to question their own quiet compromises. That responsibility felt heavy some days. She reminded herself that she didn't ask to be a symbol, she just refused to stay silent. The family was left divided between pride and fear, worried about how much more exposure might come. Another shift occurred when industry insiders began speaking in coded language, acknowledging problems without naming them. Fans are shocked by how quickly awareness spread once denial cracked. Emotions ran high as Rasheeda recognized that change often starts with discomfort disguised as diplomacy. She listened carefully, understanding that not all progress announces itself loudly. Kendra attended a closed-door discussion where the tone was noticeably different from months earlier. Questions about ethics, consent, and narrative responsibility were raised openly. She didn't lead the conversation, but her presence mattered. The family was left divided on whether these talks meant real change or temporary damage control. Kendra chose cautious optimism. Rasheeda struggled with lingering anger she didn't expect. She thought speaking up would release it completely, but healing came in layers. Emotions ran high when she realized forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, and peace didn't mean pretending. She allowed herself to feel resentment without letting it define her. Public reaction continued to fluctuate. Some fans lost interest once the shock faded. Others stayed deeply engaged, analyzing every development. Fans are shocked by how long the story lasted without new explosions. The family was left divided on whether quiet progress was less satisfying than dramatic closure. Rasheeda found comfort in the calm, even when it felt unfamiliar. Kendra noticed her instincts sharpening. She became more selective with conversations, quicker to sense when someone wanted truth versus attention. That discernment protected her energy. Emotions ran high when she realized how often she once ignored those instincts to maintain access and approval. Another unexpected moment came when an old clip resurfaced, reframed with new context. Fans are shocked by how differently it was received now. Comments reflected empathy instead of mockery. The family was left divided, but the shift in tone felt meaningful. Rasheeda watched quietly, feeling both vindicated and sad that understanding came so late. Kendra shared that moment with Rasheeda, noting how perspective can change meaning without altering facts. They talked about how narratives aren't fixed, they evolve as awareness grows. That realization felt empowering. Emotions ran high as they acknowledged they were no longer trapped in the first version of the story. Time brought space, and space brought clarity. Rasheeda began to see how much of her identity had been shaped by reaction. Without constant defense, she rediscovered parts of herself that had nothing to prove. The family was left divided in public perception, but internally, she felt whole. Kendra experienced something similar. She admitted she felt quieter, not diminished, but grounded. Fans are shocked by the steadiness she projected. Emotions ran high as she realized peace doesn't need applause to be valid. Rumors continued, as they always do, but they lost their power. Speculation felt distant, less personal. Rasheeda stopped reading everything. She trusted that what mattered would reach her without effort. The family was left divided on how much to engage, but boundaries became non-negotiable. Another turning point came when someone who once dismissed the situation privately acknowledged its impact. It wasn't public, it wasn't performative, but it was sincere. Rasheeda accepted it without celebration. Emotions ran high as she recognized growth doesn't always look like justice, sometimes it looks like quiet understanding. Kendra felt relief hearing about that moment. She said recognition, even delayed, still mattered. The family was left divided on whether it was enough, but both women understood that closure isn't always mutual or symmetrical. As months turned into a year, the story softened into context. It became part of a larger conversation about representation and power. Fans are shocked by how something that began as drama matured into dialogue. Emotions ran high in spaces where people reflected instead of reacted. Rasheeda found herself mentoring without realizing it, offering advice rooted in experience rather than theory. She warned about the cost of silence, but also about the cost of speaking. Honesty, she said, isn't free, but neither is suppression. The family was left divided on how much to share, but her words resonated. Kendra leaned into that role too, encouraging discernment over impulsiveness. She reminded people that courage doesn't always mean exposure. Sometimes it means preparation. Emotions ran high as she saw others navigate choices she once made without guidance. Eventually, the narrative stopped asking what happened and started asking what changed. Fans are shocked by how subtle the answers were. No dramatic overhaul, no perfect accountability, just awareness, caution, conversation. The family was left divided on expectations, but progress rarely meets every demand. Rasheeda accepted that her role wasn't to fix everything. It was to refuse erasure. That clarity freed her from outcomes she couldn't control. Emotions ran high when she realized how much lighter life felt without constant justification. Kendra shared that realization, saying agency was the greatest outcome. Not approval, not redemption, but choice. The family was left divided, but self-trust became the anchor. The secret no longer felt like a burden. It became a reference point, a reminder of what happens when silence breaks. Fans are shocked because the loudest chapter wasn't the reveal, it was the aftermath, the endurance, the growth. And as the story continued to ripple quietly through conversations and decisions, one truth held steady. Honesty didn't end the chaos, but it ended the illusion. And that changed everything. The story reached a phase where silence no longer felt threatening, it felt intentional. Rasheeda noticed how people stopped demanding statements and started observing actions. Fans are shocked because the absence of chaos felt louder than any argument. Emotions ran high in subtle ways now, in pauses, in choices, in what was no longer tolerated. Kendra reflected on how far she'd come from that first moment of fear. She remembered how her hands shook when she spoke, how unsure she was of what would follow. Now, uncertainty still existed, but it no longer ruled her. The family was left divided on what strength looked like, but she learned it didn't have to be loud to be real. Another unexpected development surfaced when industry conversations began referencing lessons learned, without directly naming the situation. Fans are shocked by how influence can exist without credit. Emotions ran high as Rasheeda realized that even unacknowledged impact is still impact. She didn't need her name attached to every change for it to matter. Kendra attended an event where transparency was openly discussed as a value rather than a risk. She listened more than she spoke, recognizing how rare that space once felt. The family was left divided on whether this represented growth or optics, but Kendra felt something genuine shift in the room. Rasheeda continued focusing on rebuilding trust within herself. She noticed how her body responded differently now, less tension, less anticipation of conflict. Emotions ran high when she realized how much stress she once normalized. Letting go of that survival mode felt like learning how to breathe again. Public interest fluctuated, but the core conversation stayed alive. Fans are shocked by how the narrative matured without constant provocation. The family was left divided between craving resolution and accepting ambiguity. Rasheeda learned that not all stories end, some transform. Kendra embraced that idea. She stopped seeking validation from outcomes and focused on process. Every decision was measured against alignment rather than approval. Emotions ran high as she recognized how deeply that shift changed her sense of self. Another subtle ripple occurred when new faces entered the space with clearer boundaries. They asked different questions, negotiated differently, refused certain dynamics outright. Fans are shocked by how quickly culture can evolve when expectations change. The family was left divided on whether this was coincidence or consequence. Rasheeda saw it as momentum. She also noticed how her own reactions softened. Criticism no longer felt like a personal attack. Praise no longer felt like proof of worth. Emotions ran high as she realized neutrality could be peaceful rather than empty. Kendra faced a moment of doubt when an old opportunity resurfaced, rebranded but familiar. She weighed it carefully and declined again. That choice didn't come with applause, but it came with certainty. The family was left divided, but her resolve didn't waver. As conversations continued, Rasheeda and Kendra spoke less about what happened and more about what they learned. Silence is complicity, fear is currency, honesty as disruption. Fans are shocked by how reflective the tone became. Emotions ran high because reflection demands responsibility. Time revealed which relationships could adapt and which couldn't. Some people drifted away quietly. Others returned with humility. The family was left divided, but Rasheeda accepted that growth reshuffles circles. Holding on to outdated connections only slows progress. Kendra found peace in that understanding. She stopped chasing reconciliation that required self-betrayal. Emotions ran high when she realized boundaries don't require explanation, only consistency. The secret eventually became less about exposure and more about reminder. A reminder of what silence costs. A reminder of what honesty demands. Fans are shocked because the most lasting effect wasn't scandal, it was awareness. Rasheeda embraced a future that wasn't fully mapped. Uncertainty no longer frightened her. It felt honest. Emotions ran high when she accepted that clarity isn't always immediate, but integrity is constant. Kendra agreed. She said the most powerful outcome was agency. Choosing when to speak. Choosing when to walk away. Choosing peace without permission. The family was left divided, but self-trust replaced consensus. The story didn't conclude with a final scene or definitive answer. It continued quietly, in changed behaviors, in cautious conversations, in subtle resistance to old patterns. Fans are shocked by how lasting that kind of change can be. And as the noise finally softened into memory, one truth remained clear. The moment silence broke, everything shifted. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but permanently. That was the aftermath. The aftermath settled into something quieter but no less intense. Rasheeda noticed how even casual conversations carried more weight now. People listened instead of interrupting, responded instead of deflecting. Fans are shocked because the energy around her felt different, less reactive, more deliberate. Emotions ran high in moments that once would have passed unnoticed, like someone choosing honesty over convenience, or stepping back instead of escalating. Kendra felt that shift most clearly in herself. She realized how much of her past confidence was actually armor. Now, without that armor, she felt exposed but real. The family was left divided on whether vulnerability was strength or risk, but Kendra no longer questioned it. She knew who she was when the noise faded, and that mattered more than approval. Another wave of reflection hit when older footage continued to resurface organically, not through leaks, but through rewatching. Fans are shocked by how many moments took on new meaning. Pauses felt intentional. Reactions felt restrained. Emotions ran high as viewers recognized patterns they once overlooked. Rasheeda watched quietly, not engaging, not correcting. She trusted that perspective was finally catching up to experience. With time, the idea of sides began to dissolve. The family was left divided, but less rigidly. People admitted complexity. Some apologized without prompting. Others stayed distant. Rasheeda accepted both outcomes. Closure, she learned, doesn't always come from resolution. Sometimes it comes from release. Kendra encountered a moment that tested her growth when she was invited into a space that once excluded her. The tone was respectful, the invitation sincere. She considered it carefully, aware of old dynamics that could resurface. Emotions ran high as she weighed curiosity against self-protection. In the end, she attended on her own terms, setting boundaries before stepping in. That choice felt like evolution, not compromise. Rasheeda supported her, reminding her that progress doesn't mean isolation. It means choice. The family was left divided on whether returning to old spaces was wise, but Kendra trusted her instincts. She walked in grounded, left unchanged, and that alone felt like a victory. As months passed, conversations around the secret matured further. People stopped asking what happened and started asking how it was handled. Fans are shocked by how accountability became part of the language. Emotions ran high as discussions centered on responsibility instead of spectacle. Rasheeda found herself less interested in defending the past and more invested in shaping the present. She focused on projects that reflected her values, choosing collaboration over control. The family was left divided in expectations, but alignment guided her decisions. Kendra mirrored that approach. She prioritized clarity, even when it cost opportunity. Emotions ran high as she realized how often clarity scared people more than chaos. Still, she stayed firm. Integrity had become non-negotiable. Another subtle shift occurred when younger voices began entering the conversation with confidence. They referenced lessons learned, boundaries established, examples set. Fans are shocked by how influence can echo quietly. Rasheeda felt a deep sense of responsibility but also relief. The weight she once carried alone was now shared. Kendra acknowledged that same feeling. She said the burden of speaking up lightens when others continue the conversation. The family was left divided, but momentum doesn't require unanimity, only persistence. Public interest eventually softened into context. Headlines faded, but understanding remained. Emotions ran high when Rasheeda realized she no longer flinched at reminders of that time. Memory lost its sting. It became information, not identity. Kendra reached a moment of clarity during a private reflection. She realized she no longer defined herself by reaction. Whether praised or criticized, her center held. The family was left divided on whether she had changed or simply revealed herself. She believed it was the latter. As the narrative settled into history, its impact became clearer. Not dramatic overhaul, not perfect reform, but awareness. Caution. Conversation. Fans are shocked by how enduring subtle change can be. Emotions ran high as people acknowledged progress without pretending perfection. Rasheeda accepted that her story would always be interpreted differently depending on who was listening. She stopped trying to control that. Truth, she learned, doesn't need consensus to exist. The family was left divided, but her inner world felt unified. Kendra shared that sentiment, saying peace comes from alignment, not agreement. She trusted that those meant to understand would. Others didn't need convincing. The story didn't end with applause or condemnation. It ended with agency. The secret lost its power as a secret and became a lesson. Fans are shocked because the real transformation wasn't televised. It unfolded quietly, in choices made off camera. And as life moved forward, both women carried the same understanding. Silence may feel safe, but honesty creates space. Space for growth, space for change, space for self. That was the legacy. Now it's your turn. You've heard the secret, you've felt the tension, and you've watched how one moment of honesty sent shockwaves through everything you thought you knew. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided, but the biggest question still remains. Was speaking out worth the fallout, or did it cost too much? You decide. Do you think Rasheeda and Kendra were brave for revealing the truth, or do you believe some doors should stay closed for the sake of peace? Was this a necessary wake-up call, or did it change the game forever in ways no one can undo? There are still unanswered questions, unresolved tensions, and choices that will shape what happens next. If this story made you pause, rethink, or even question what you see on reality TV, make sure you show it. Hit that like button so more people can hear this story. Subscribe to the channel if you want more exclusive, dramatic deep dives that go beyond the surface and into what's really happening behind the scenes. And don't stay silent, drop a comment and tell us exactly where you stand. Are you team truth no matter the cost, or do you believe silence sometimes protects more than it hurts? Do you think this reveal changed everything, or is the real fallout still coming? Read the comments, join the conversation, and remember, when secrets come to light, nothing stays the same. This story isn't over yet, and neither is the debate.